Genesis chapter 40. Genesis chapter 40, verse 8. A lot of this ends up being repeat. We talked about this last week because we ran into other numbers, but we'll hit this again and just do a quick review on it. Genesis 40, verse 8. And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Okay, so he's saying interpretations belong to God as though that's something they should have already known. Let me ask you something. Don't interpretations belong to God? The inference is you already know this. You know that interpretations are intended to be in one place, God. So that tells you something about the Bible. The Bible is God's interpretation of everything you need. So the Bible doesn't need to be interpreted. It is the interpretation. This is the interpretation.
That's right.
You just go pull life and bring it to it, and you've got the two together. This is the interpretation of everything you see, think, and feel in life. It's not to be privately interpreted. It's not to be twisted. It's not for me to put a meaning on, take it out of context, and try to fit it to a situation. God will do that with you individually. He makes it plain. You just take the scripture and let it interpret itself. Now, by doing that, there's a simple way to let the Bible interpret itself. The most basic way to get the Bible to interpret itself is with words, because it's made out of words. So you take a word. If you want to know what the word beginning means, you look up the word beginning. Every time the word beginning is used in the Bible, look it up. By the time you've finished looking it up, you have a complete definition of what God's idea of the word beginning means. Now, I just pulled that out of the air. I'll give you a good one to look up. Death. We have a different definition of death than God does.
That's right.
So take the word death, look at it every time it's used all the way through the Bible, and as it changes, as God adds more information, the definition will grow. By the time you get done, you understand what God says death really is. Okay, Genesis chapter 40, verse 20. And it came to pass the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday. Pay attention. That he made this is birthdays. That he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. Okay, so here is a place early on in the Bible where you get a birthday. Very few places in the Bible does anybody celebrate a birthday. Birthdays are not a good celebration in the Bible.
Hey.
In the Bible, birthdays are a bad celebration. I'm going to give them to you. Genesis 40, verse 20 is Pharaoh's birthday, and somebody loses their head.
Yeah, somebody's about to.
Is there a downside to this?
In Mark 14, verse 6, Matthew 14, 6, and Mark 6, 21. Matthew 14, 6, and Mark 6, 21. You have Herod's birthday. And who loses their head when Herod has a birthday?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist. Quiet, Herod, I'm trying to teach. In Revelation 11, verse 10, you have another very famous birthday that's going to be hitting every store you know in the next 3 days. Christmas. Revelation 11, verse 10. Revelation 11, verse 10. This is in the tribulation. The two witnesses are here, and they are killed. The time of year they're killed is told. Revelation 11, verse 10. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and send gifts one to another, because those two prophets tormented them that dwelt upon the earth. So it's going to be Christmas time. There's no reason to call Christmas Merry Christmas. I'm just destroying everybody's wonderful ideas of life, aren't I?
No. I'm with this.
We don't say Merry Halloween. We don't say Merry Easter. We don't say Merry anything, do we?
Happy Easter. People say Happy Easter. I've heard them say that to me.
But do they say Merry?
No, they say Mary.
Do they say Merry any other holiday? What holiday?
Merry Christmas.
Any other? Any other?
Any other holiday.
No, it's happy usually.
Mm-hmm. Mary is for a reason. It's Catholic. The Virgin Mary. And it's Christ and Mass. What's a Mass?
A massacre.
A massacre. A death. Which is exactly what a Mass is. They have blood and something they say becomes flesh. That's a massacre. Mass. So it's Mary first. Christ massacre. That's Merry Christmas. Now that everybody's all happy about the holidays, let's move on.
It's not a religious holiday. It's just a
Well, yeah, it's a pagan. Genesis 41, verse 32. So that's the third birthday. There's 3 birthdays in the Bible, and that's where they are. Genesis 41, 32.
I heard Jehovah's Witnesses say that's why they don't celebrate birthdays.
They don't celebrate birthdays, that's true. And a lot of things they don't do. They don't have pictures because they don't want to have any images. And that's fine to do if you've got Bible for it and you decide between you and God that's what He wants you to do. Then do it. But unless God told you to do it and you've got Bible for it, you're just following what somebody said is a religious ritual. Now, we follow many religious rituals. The question becomes, how far do you push them? So, what's the priority ranking of it? We have a ritual that we come here and I preach for 12 hours and then y'all get to go home. Some people have a ritual of they come to church and they sing 3 songs. They have announcements. They take up an invitation or an offering. They have another song. Then they preach. Then they have an invitation. Then they go home. Those are rituals. There's nothing wrong with those rituals. But if you get offended if I break those traditions, those rituals, then there's a problem. You've exalted those rituals as though they were God-given when they're not. And you've given them the same position as the Bible. Now, if you can show me out of the Bible where you're supposed to sing 3 songs, have a sermon, take up an offering, do all these things, then we'll talk.
I can show you where you're supposed to sing 1 song before your last supper.
Correct.
Isn't that what Jesus
They
was
sang a
telling
hymn.
the Pharisees?
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm. Tradition of men. Okay, Genesis 41, verse 32. Genesis 41, 32. So, Joseph is called in to interpret a dream. He says, for that the dream was doubled. What's doubled mean?
Confirmed.
Doubled.
Twice.
What's doubled mean?
He
No,
dreamed it
twice.
2 times.
Doubled means 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Same thing repeated. Unto Pharaoh twice. What's twice mean? 2. So you've got double. Right, it means doubled. You've got 2 and 2. He put it there twice because he's about to tell you what 2 means. And the very thing he did in this first phrase is what it means. It is because the thing is established by God, 1, and will shortly, and God will shortly bring it to pass, 2. The thing's established by God, and He'll shortly bring it to pass. I can't just tell you it's done, because that'd be 1 phrase. Okay, so there's going to be a 2-fold definition for this word, because doubled means twice. So you can understand what 2 means. Nobody invented numbers. You don't invent numbers. What man did was discovered numbers. God created numbers. So real numbers don't lie. But like anything God creates, man sure does know how to manipulate them into a lie. Okay, so 2 is a thing that's established by God and will shortly come to pass. In Jeremiah 1, verse 11. Jeremiah 1, verse 11. So when God repeats something in the Bible, perk up, because that means the thing's established and it'll shortly come to pass. Something else to notice, Jeremiah 1, verse 11. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Jeremiah, what seest thou? And I said, I see a rod of an almond tree. And the Lord said unto me, Thou hast well seen, for I will hasten my word to perform it. Very same thing Joseph said 2 means. So an almond tree, an almond rod in the Bible, will also have this same meaning. What flower did Aaron's rod bud?
An almond.
Almond. Because God had done this. He had declared that Aaron was his priest. He brought it to pass. Genesis 43, verse 34. Genesis 43, 34. This is Joseph, and he finally reunited with his brothers. And he took and sent messes. Messes, is that something good? No. I guess
would not approve of
you can
that.
take this verse to say that a mess is a good thing. And he took and sent messes unto them from before him. But Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. Okay, so Benjamin gets 5 times as much mess. Now, a mess, what does a mess mean? You understand what a mess is? Everybody knows what a mess is. You know what a mess hall is? It doesn't mean people are making a mess in the hall. It means it's a place we're going to eat.
Sigh of relief from Robert.
Some people do make a mess with a mess hall. But it means it's something you're going to eat. You see, we'll say, give me a mess of turnip greens or a mess of collard greens. Or it's always called a mess. It just means a big bunch.
In the South.
In the South, yeah. The North wouldn't know what that is.
Southern Jews.
Right.
In your
Southern
military,
Egyptians.
in your military gear, they call it a mess kit.
Uh-huh.
Mess hall.
I think the Lord is Southern anyway with his
Oh, yeah.
doll and stuff
Yep,
in there.
yep. In our verse, he says he sent Benjamin 5 times. So why does Benjamin get, here's a number, 5? So, yes, 5 is the number of death. So what does that mean? Is Benjamin going to die?
No, his mother died when she had
His mom died. Genesis 35, verse 17. Genesis 35, 17. And it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Omai, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. So she died when he was born, when this child was born, Benjamin. Joseph knew it. He said, to let everybody know that I know the family history, I'm going to give him 5 times as much. They know 5 means death. When they see that I've given him 5 times as much, they'll do the math. No pun intended, but yes. Genesis 44, verse 33. Genesis 44, 33. It says, Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. So here someone is saying, hey, don't take Benjamin. I know you found the golden cup in his sack, and it looks like he's the bad guy, but don't take him. I'll tell you what we can do. We can make a trade. I'll stand in for him, and you can take me, you can have me, and let this boy go. Now, who's doing this talking? This is Judah talking, his brother Judah. which makes perfect sense. Because Jesus Christ is from where?
Tribe of Judah.
The tribe of Judah.
Wasn't
And-
Judah the one also that tried to get them not to bury him in the well?
No, that's somebody else. I'll find it for you in a second.
Okay.
No, that was a coward. Is who that was.
I was thinking he was the one that said, don't,
Yeah,
we'll sell
he's a
it,
big
don't
liar.
kill him,
I think that was
Reuben.
Reuben.
Ate a
Um,
sandwich after him.
Yeah, he's
He
a
was rewarded.
he's a joke because he says what he ends up doing. We're off subject. We'll get back to this in a second. What he ends up doing is saying, "I tell you what we can do, Dad. If I don't bring him back, do this: kill my kids.
Instead of himself.
What a
Yeah.
pathetic creature.
How about saying, come kill me?"
I always wondered why he did
And
that.
he's not. You know that he's not going to kill his grandkids anyway. So that was a false option to begin with, all the way around, and that's the one who claims, "Oh, I'm going to come back and get him." He's a liar from the beginning and a coward. Okay, so Judah. Judah is the one who stands in, wants to be the propitiation for Benjamin. Jesus, from the line of Judah, has stood in and been made our propitiation. He's taken everything for us. He's the perfect scapegoat. We get out free if we accept what he's already paid for us. In Genesis 45, verse 20. Genesis 45, 20. Genesis 45, 20. Okay. Hold your place in Genesis 45:20 because we'll come back. Look at Genesis 37. Genesis 37, verse 29. And Reuben returned unto the pit. Behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. This is where he's going to feign as though he was going to be the Savior all along. Now go to chapter 42.
Genesis 42.
Do what?
Genesis 42?
Mm-hmm. Genesis 42, verse 37. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, Slay my two sons, if I bring him not unto thee. Deliver him into my hands, and I will bring him unto thee. What? No, he didn't. He's given him a fake promise because he's been fake all along. He starts it all the way back. So that's Reuben. Reuben's a no good coward. Okay, back to Genesis 45. Genesis 45, verse 20. Genesis 45, 20. It says, Also, regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. That's a pretty good deal. He said, don't worry about bringing anything. Just come on back. Tell you what, we've got a big country here. You know, this is the country everybody's been running to for help. The best of everything that is here, you can have. I'll sign up for that one. That's a good deal. But guess what? We've been given the same deal. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. 1 Corinthians 3, verse 21.
The part where they said Egypt ends up being bad for them later.
Yeah, they're going to get to use the junk, the stuff. But that's just it. Stuff is temporary. You got stuff down in the wilderness, okay, don't worry about bringing your stuff. There's more stuff over here. When you get to someplace else you need, there'll be stuff over there.
I got
Don't
stuff
get it.
in my yard for you.
Don't get attached to stuff. That's right. In 1 Corinthians 3:21, he says, "Therefore, let no man glory in men, for all things are yours." Well, we could really pull that one out of context right there. All things are yours. If you want to become a charismatic, that's a good verse to do it on. Verse 22, "Whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas, or the world, or life, or death, or things present, or things to come, all are yours, and ye are Christ's, and Christ is God's." So he says, everything here, in some manner, you hold the title deed to. Because everything goes back to God. He owns it all. It's all his. So if he decides, he'll let you have some of it. But that's where the catch is. We want to decide. I want this junk right here. And we'll see that that's what is going on here. He's saying, look, don't worry about your stuff. Just come on over. They come in droves of wagons. So they're bringing in a bunch of stuff. Now I understand some things they did need to bring. They had cattle. You need to bring the cattle. That's your livelihood. Yeah, laptops, your cell phones, and yeah. Big screen TVs.
Didn't Pharaoh tell Joseph to tell them to take wagons and go get their family?
Yes, they have to bring certain things. You need your bedding, you need some things. But you don't need a bunch of junk. There's a reason for that. Because you're going to get more junk, and it's just junk, and it's going to fall apart, and you're going to need more junk after that junk.
Just crappy to dust.
Romans 8. Romans 8, verse 32. Romans 8:32. It says, "He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things?" So Jesus Christ died on the cross for you and I. That's what he did. He gave up everything for us. So if he's going to do that, and now he holds the title deed to everything, you ain't got nothing to worry about. If you need something, he'll give it to you. It's all his.
Right.
You ain't got to worry.
If we need something, not if we want something.
That's right. If he decides we need something. And we don't even understand how to determine whether or not we need something. He decides that. Now, there are certain things he said you'll never have to worry about. You never have to worry about food. God will always see to it that you have food. You can hold on to that promise. It says having food and raiment. You'll always have something you can wear, according to Jesus Christ. He said, having food and raiment, let us therewith be content. So that takes a load off of you. You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about clothes. God will see to it that you have those. Now, they may not be Polo every time. It may not be Miss Kim's cooking. You're going to have something you can eat. It may be acorns and persimmons. But there's going to be something you can eat. God's promised that.
You can actually make a meal out of acorn.
Oh, no
I
thank you.
believe that, but
Yeah.
it's not the tastiest.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it
Leave
is.
that to the squirrels.
Yeah.
Those are tasty.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are, sorry, yeah.
There's not enough meat on them. Revelation 2, verse 17.
You can make a meal out of it.
Revelation 2:17.
Acorns taste good once they're processed by squirrels.
I would rather have the processor than the acorns.
It says, "He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone. And the white stone is a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it." Okay, who's overcome? Well, I'll give you both sides of this. Let's spiritualize it for a second. Who has overcome. We know for a fact that Jesus Christ has overcome. He says, it's finished. I did it all. He did. He overcame. He conquered. Okay? Doesn't he get a new name? He says he does. He says he's going to have a new name written that nobody knows. Okay, guess what? God's going to do for him what he just promised to do to some individual. Now let's get the doctrinal application. Who's this talking to? It's definitely not talking to the church, even though everybody...
Jews in the tribulation.
Yeah. Many people are going to tell you that the first 4 chapters of Revelation have to do with the church age. They have nothing to do with the church age. What's overcome mean?
Overcome
Overcome what?
The tribulation.
How many times?
worms. and faith.
Right. Overcome the tribulation. Overcome the devil coming physically as an Antichrist, coming after you to kill you, enduring to the end. Overcome that way. They get something. They get to eat of hidden manna, as in what they're going to be fed in the wilderness at Petra. God's going to open the heavens and give them manna, just like he did in the wilderness with Moses. They'll get that. So it's literally fulfilled word for word in the tribulation, and it has nothing to do with church age. We can spiritualize it and see Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of that. If we're in him, we got no problems. Genesis 46, verse 32. Genesis 46, 32. So all the family comes into Egypt, and Joseph says, hey, look, I don't want you to get involved into anything you shouldn't be. Let's keep you doing what you've been doing. You've been making a mess just being shepherd, so let's just keep it that way and see if you can learn anything. Verse 32. It says, and the men are shepherds, for their trade hath been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds, and all that they have. Okay, he says, look, a shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. So I want you to be an abomination to Egypt. That'll keep you separate. While you're getting the good of their land, and while you're being promised to live in the best parts they have, that's just because God's decided to give you something special. But don't equate yourself with an Egyptian. So in order to do that, make sure they know you're a shepherd, because you'll be an abomination to them. Just like us, you should be an abomination to the lost. The heathen should fear you. There should be something about you they can sense, a purity and a holiness in you that scares them to death.
And they're not comfortable.
No. I could give you many stories, but I won't. Genesis 46, verse 32. No, we just read that. Genesis. Go back to Genesis 1, verse 24. Here's where God created these animals that they're making a living from. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creature after his kind, cattle, and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. So God makes these cattle. Cattle does not necessarily mean a sheep. A shepherd doesn't mean you're watching sheep. A cattle or a shepherd means you're watching a 4-legged animal that grazes. And the book is full of illustrations. There's, if you're writing down notes, I'll just give them to you quickly. Genesis 1:26, Genesis 2:20, Genesis 8:1, Genesis 30 verse 32, Genesis 30 verse 40, Genesis 46:32, Genesis 46:34, Genesis 47:17, Exodus 9:3, Exodus 34:19, Leviticus 26:22, Numbers 20 verse 4, Genesis 33:17, Numbers 32:16, Deuteronomy 5:14, Deuteronomy 28:4. All of those will show you that a 4-legged animal that grazes is not necessarily a sheep. Many times it's a goat, it's a cow, but it's cattle, and they're in sheep folds.
They were cowboys.
Yes. All right, Genesis 47, verse 6. Pharaoh's talking to Joseph here. Genesis 47, 6. The land of Egypt is before thee, and the best of the land make thy father and brethren to dwell. Imagine that. You've got to make them do this. Hey, we got a Taj Mahal over here. Yes, you're going to go stay in that. That's the best we got. Okay, he's going to redefine something here. The best of the land is defined here. In the land of Goshen, let them dwell. And if thou knowest any men of the activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. So he says, these are shepherds, and I understand that. I've been sold all these cattle because the Egyptians didn't have anything. Remember, they sold him everything, all their cattle, all their land, and themselves as well. So Pharaoh's got all of this product now. He says, hey, your boys are shepherds. I got a bunch of cattle. Let's work out a deal here. But you don't ever find Joseph offering any of his brothers to watch Pharaoh's cattle. He still doesn't. He's forgiven them, but he's not forgetting how wicked they are. They're here. They're in the land of Goshen. They're doing something that makes them separate from the Egyptians, and Joseph is keeping an eye on them.
He didn't trust them.
That's right. Forgiveness is not trust. There's a big difference. Never forgive and forget. That's a catchphrase that is far from Bible. If a dog bites you, you can forgive the dog. If you go back and play with that dog that you know bites you, guess what? He's going to bite you again.
You're stupid.
And you can forgive him again, and every time you go back in there, he's going to bite you. It doesn't change anything. So you can forgive him, but how about we not forget and we learn something? Okay, I'm going to stay on this side of the fence. I forgive that dog, but I'm going to stay over here. I know what he does. So forgive, that's good, but don't forget. Learn. Let's see. Israel lived on what we'd call the right side of the tracks, the best of the land. They had it all. So this is a good thing. Genesis, where am I? Genesis 47, verse 11. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren, and gave them possessions in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land. Okay, remember what it was called before?
Goshen.
So how are we going to find them now? In the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded.
That's the same place.
So there you go. It's either called Goshen or Ramses. Can be the same thing. Exodus chapter 1, verse 11. Oh, I didn't tell you. Hold your place in Genesis 47, verse 11. Genesis 47, 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom, and Ramses. Now, look at the last word of that verse.
Which is this one?
That's Exodus 1, verse 11. The last word of that verse. Then look at chapter 47, verse 11. And find the last city.
Ramses. That's spelled different.
Yes.
Like that.
What's the difference?
There's two A's and not one.
Two ways to spell it. Just some interesting things. No major point to it. Just want to show you.
Wow, that's
Why
neat.
would they make it spelled different though?
Read your history books.
They couldn't read.
No, read your history books. It's only been in the last 200 years there's been any standardized spelling. Prior to that, there's never been a standardized spelling.
So whatever it felt like.
It was phonetics, correct. It was done based on how it was pronounced. And very few people could spell or write. Israel was an exception to the rule. They all had to learn to write and to read because it was all based on Bible. You have to be able to read this law. They had to memorize it. They had to write it on their doorposts. So they were educated, unlike every other nation around them. Genesis 47:28.
If you go back and read Chaucer's Tale,
Mm-hmm.
all of that, the spelling is
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you get a 1611 Bible, you'll see it's not really the spelling, but the letters are different. They'll use an F for an S, but they're going to pronounce it the same way we do. It's just that's the way they spelled it. So I mean, it's evolved. Genesis 47:28. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, so that the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. So he dies an old man, 147 years old. Now we went over this last time. These are the numbers. Jacob dies being 147 years old. Jacob was in the land for 17 years. So that's how long he got to come enjoy Egypt. Joseph was in the land before his dad and family came. He was in the land for 22 years all by himself. Joseph was brought to Egypt when he was 17. So those numbers match up. He lives with his father for 17 years. And then for 17 years, his father lives with him in Egypt after he comes back. Jacob, from just the math we've seen from Bible, you can find out how old he is when Joseph is born. Jacob is 91 years old when Joseph is born. That's an old man. Yeah. Those are just interesting things that.
almost as bad as Abraham.
Yeah. Right. Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's not too bad. You know, we're just got some people that are voting for it. That's 156 years.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Good heavens.
Genesis 49:10. Genesis 49:10. He says, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, till Shiloh come." So it'll be late. And until,
That was not funny. Yes, he went there. Wait till he needs an arrangement brought by a certain time.
Now, what was that thing about beheading?
Looks like we're celebrating your birthday.
That's right.
Yeah, the sharpener at the house.
And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Okay, so he's promised something here. He's promised there's going to be a king. We don't realize this, but Israel claiming we want a king is not a bad thing. That's a natural instinct God's given them because he promised them a king way back in the beginning. He says, you're going to get a king, and it's going to come from this line right here. Then for years and years and years, no king. They say, God, where's the king? We want a king. Look around, everybody else has got one. You promised us one, where's ours? So I understand that they're doing it because they're demanding it and they want their way, and that's wrong. However, he has promised them a king, and it's supposed to come from a specific place. Now, there's a reason they had to wait so long. They should have been able to get their king immediately, but they didn't. The second God wants to bless you, the devil wants to blast you, and he does. When God has given you something good or you see something great out of the Bible, be on guard. The devil's coming right behind him. Look at Deuteronomy 23. Deuteronomy 23, verse 2.
Yeah, the Israelites picked that as the line of Benjamin
Well, God gave it to him that way. Deuteronomy 23, verse 2. He says, "A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord." I did a whole lesson on this, but we'll review it quickly. So a bastard, we understand, that's an illegitimate child, is not allowed to be in the congregation, so he's definitely not going to be king. So, Zechariah 9, verse 6, he gives you the same story. He's given a curse here. He says, "A bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines." So Ashdod, that was a territory of the giants. The Philistines had that. He says, "I'll tell you what, we'll just make that a territory for illegitimate people." In Judges chapter 11, verse 1, here's your exception to the rule. You always have to have an exception to the rule. If there's no exception to the rule, there's no rule. There has to always be exceptions in everything. The rule is you can't speed. The speed limit is this, whatever this number is. However, the police don't do that number. So they're an exception. If there's a moving truck in front of you with a wide load and he's going slow, guess what? You're not doing the speed limit. You can't. Okay, there's going to be some exceptions. Here's an exception. Jude 11:1. "Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of an harlot. The Gilead begat Jephthah." Okay, so here is someone who's entered into the congregation and become the leader of Israel, and he himself is illegitimate. I'm trying to shorten this.
In verse 2 it said they threw him out, though.
Yeah, read the chapter. He comes back with a vengeance. Okay, Genesis 38. Genesis 38, verse 1. Judah has just been promised the line of kings, the royalty is going to be in him. Look what happens. "And it came to pass at that time that Judah," that's the one who's supposed to be the kingly line, "Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hiram. And Judah saw there a daughter, a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. Shuna. How you say that?
Shua.
That too. Shua. And he took her and went in unto her, and she conceived and bare a son and called his name because it was an
Right.
Verse 7. "And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him." Okay, he can't be king because he's illegitimate. Matter of fact, he's wicked, and God kills him. Look at verse 12. "And in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted and went up unto his sheep shears to Timnah, and his friend Hiram the Adulamite." Okay, so what we have here is his sons are illegitimate. So that should have been where the royalty would lie. But he's messed it up because the devil's provided him something wicked to destroy the line. This, from Genesis to the rest of the Bible, you'll see the devil trying to defeat the things God's already promised. When God makes a public proclamation, the devil comes after it. Now, let that be a lesson to us. Sometimes God hides a promise, and he intends it just for you. Don't open your mouth and talk about it. When many times you'll see in the Bible when God appears to a person, the response is, like with Mary, she kept all these things in her heart and pondered them. Don't open your big mouth and talk about it, so now you've told the devil what to tempt you with, what to distract you with. Keep your mouth shut. Wait until God's fulfilled it. He's giving you a heads up. That's something for you to smile about. But don't have to tell anybody why. That's what's going on here. The devil's trying to defeat this line. Early on, we saw in Genesis chapter 3 that he had promised there's going to be a line that's going to destroy Satan. Now Judah comes along. He says, this is the tribe. My king's going to come from this tribe. So, devil knows the Bible a lot better than we do. He says, okay, I know there's a rule in there that says a bastard, an illegitimate child, can't enter into the congregation until the 10th generation. Well, Judah, I'm going to take him right off the bat. The first person from Judah himself, and we're going to get illegitimate children from him so they can't be king. Okay, so he's right. The Bible is true. 10 generations you can't have a king. Look at I'm trying to shortcut this. Go to Ruth. Ruth 4 verse 18. Yes, Ruth 4 verse 18. Now these are the generations of Pharaoh. Who's Pharaoh? He's the son of Judah. Okay? He's an illegitimate child. He's a twin. Pharaoh, that's one, begat Hezron. That's two. Hezron begat Ram. Ram begat Abinadab. Abinadab begat Nahshon. Nahshon begat Salmon. Salmon begat Boaz. Boaz begat Obed. Obed begat Jesse. Jesse, number 10, begat David. So there's the king in the right generation from the right line. But he had to wait 10 generations because the scripture's not going to change. God's rules are God's rules, period. The devil knows that, and he knows God is just and God is not going to break his rules. So because of that, we've got to be on guard. We have to. All right, is that enough, or y'all want to keep going? Let's see, where am I? 48 minutes, that's probably good enough. All right, we'll pick up there next week.